Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the USS Defiance. The stars outside looked peaceful, but he knew trouble was coming. His ship was big and strong, but compared to the alien ships out there, it seemed small and weak. The communication screen buzzed to life. Admiral Lisa Carter's face appeared, and she looked worried. Jake had known her for 10 years, and he had never seen her look this scared. "Jake, we have a problem," she said. "The Zephyrians have given us an ultimatum. They want all our colonies in the Outer Rim, or they will destroy them." Jake felt his heart sink. The Outer Rim colonies were home to over 200 million people. Men, women, and children who had worked hard to build new lives on distant worlds. They trusted Earth to protect them. What did the Galactic Council say? Jake asked, though he already feared the answer. "They voted to abandon us," Lisa said. Her voice was bitter. "The Altarians and the Centauri think it's better to sacrifice humanity than risk a war with the Zephyrians." Lieutenant Commander Amy Johnson, Jake's tactical officer, stepped forward. She was young but smart, and she had been studying alien military tactics for years. "Admiral, how long do we have?" 72 hours, Lisa replied. "They expect us to evacuate 17 colonies in 3 days. It's impossible." Jake knew she was right. Even if they used every transport ship they had, they could not move that many people in such a short time. The Zephyrians knew this too. They were not giving humanity a choice. They were giving them a death sentence. "What about Ambassador Blake?" Amy asked. "Can't he do something at the council?" Lisa shook her head. "Peter is trying, but the other races are too afraid of the Zephyrians. They have been the strongest military force in the galaxy for thousands of years. No one wants to fight them." Jake walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian fleet was moving toward human space. There, ships were massive, each one capable of destroying a planet. Their weapons were ancient but powerful. Their soldiers were trained from birth to fight and kill. "Admiral," Jake said slowly, "what if we don't run?" Lisa was quiet for a moment. "Jake, you know what happened to the Corvin Empire when they fought the Zephyrians? They were wiped out completely. Not a single Corvin survived. But the Corvins fought like everyone else fights," Amy said. "They used the same tactics, the same strategies. What if we do something different?" Jake turned back to face the screen. "Amy's right. For 50 years, we've been the junior species in the Federation. Everyone thinks we're weak and primitive. But maybe that's an advantage." Lisa looked at him carefully. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about something my grandfather told me," Jake said. "He was a soldier in the old Earth Wars. He said, the best way to win a fight is to make your enemy think you're weak when you're really strong." Amy's eyes lit up. "The Zephyrians have been studying our military for decades. They think they know everything about how we fight. But what if they're wrong?" On the screen, Lisa was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "There is something I haven't told you. Something that only a few people know about." Jake waited. He could see that Lisa was making a difficult decision. "For 30 years, we've been working on a secret project," she said. "We call it Protocol Omega. We've been building ships and weapons that look old and weak on the outside, but they're actually the most advanced technology we've ever created." Amy gasped. "You mean we've been hiding our real military strength?" "Not just hiding it," Lisa said. "We've been letting the other races think we're helpless. The Zephyrians believe they can crush us easily, but they're about to learn something about humanity that no alien race has ever understood." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What's that?" "We don't give up," Lisa said simply. "Ever. When pushed to the edge, humans don't break. We adapt. We improvise. We find a way to win." The communication screen showed a new message coming in. It was from the Zephyrian Supreme Commander Velther himself. His face was cruel and proud, with sharp teeth and glowing red eyes. "Humans," he said in a voice like grinding metal, "you have been judged weak and unworthy. Your colonies will be destroyed in 72 hours. We suggest you use this time to pray to whatever gods you believe in." The message ended, but Jake was not afraid. For the first time in days, he was actually smiling. "Admiral," he said, "I think it's time to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of." Lisa nodded. "I'm activating Protocol Omega. Gather your crew, Jake. We're going to war." As the USS Defiance prepared to jump to hyperspace, Jake looked around at his crew. They were scared, but they were also determined. Each of them knew that they were about to fight for the survival of their entire species. Amy ran her hands over her console, checking weapons and shields. "Captain, the Zephyrians have never lost a war. They've conquered hundreds of worlds." Jake sat down in his command chair. "Then I guess it's time for them to learn what losing feels like." The ship jumped to hyperspace, heading toward what everyone thought would be humanity's final battle. But Jake knew better. This was not the end of the human story. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one that would change the galaxy forever. Behind them, other human ships were also jumping to hyperspace. Ships that looked old and broken, but carried the hopes and dreams of 200 million people. The Zephyrians thought they were hunting prey. They were about to discover they had awakened. A predator. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the secret command center deep inside Earth's moon. For 30 years, this place had been hidden from the galaxy. Even most humans did not know it existed. The walls were lined with screens, showing human ships across the galaxy, all waiting for her orders. "Activate Protocol Omega," she said into her communicator. Around the galaxy, human ships that had looked old and weak began to change. Hidden panels opened, revealing advanced weapons. New shields powered up. The real human fleet was finally showing itself. Dr. Kevin Walsh, the chief of human military research, walked up to Lisa. He was an old man with gray hair, but his eyes were bright with excitement. "Admiral, the new AI systems are online. They're already learning from the Zephyrian tactics we've been studying." Lisa nodded. "How long until they're ready?" "The A's are ready now," Kevin said. "They've been analyzing alien military data for decades. But the real advantage is that they can adapt and change during battle. The Zephyrians have never faced anything like this." On the main screen, Lisa could see Captain Jake Morrison's fleet moving toward the Zephyrian armada. The alien ships were huge, each one bigger than a human city. They moved in perfect formation, like they had done for thousands of years. "Sir," said a young officer, "the Zephyrians are sending a message." "Put it on screen," Lisa ordered. "Fleet." Admiral Korthak appeared on the screen. He was even bigger than Supreme Commander Velther, with thick armor and glowing weapons. His voice was deep and frightening. "Humans," he said, "I am Korthak, commander of the Zephyrian War Fleet. I have destroyed 47 worlds. I have never been defeated. Your small ships are no match for our power. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick." Lisa smiled coldly. "Tell Admiral Korthak that humanity does not surrender, ever." The message ended, and Lisa turned to Kevin. "Are Morrison's ships ready?" "More than ready," Kevin said. "Captain Morrison's daughter Sophie is leading the fighter squadron. The Wolverine prototype is performing perfectly." Lieutenant Sophie Morrison sat in the cockpit of her fighter, the Wolverine. She was young, like her father had been when he first went to space, but she was also skilled and brave. Around her, other pilots were checking their weapons and systems. "All right, people," she said over the radio. "We're about to show these aliens something they've never seen before. Human. Pilots flying human ships, fighting for human freedom." Captain Ryan Torres, her best friend and wingman, laughed. Sophie, my grandmother always said that humans are too stubborn to know when they're beaten. Your grandmother was a smart woman, Sophie replied. Let's prove her right. On the ground, Colonel Steve Harris was preparing his forces for what everyone thought would be a massacre. The Zephyrians had never lost a ground war. Their soldiers were bigger, stronger, and faster than humans. They had better armor and better weapons. But Steve had been studying something the aliens did not understand. He had been reading about Earth's military history, about how humans had always found ways to win against stronger enemies. Listen up, he told his soldiers. The Zephyrians think they know how to fight. They've been using the same tactics for thousands of years. But we're going to show them something new. Sergeant Danny Miller, a tough soldier from Texas, raised his hand. Sir, what if their tactics work? What if we can't beat them? Steve smiled. Danny, my grandfather fought in World War II. He was outnumbered and outgunned, but he won because he never gave up. That's what we're going to do. We're going to fight like humans have always fought, with everything we've got. Meanwhile, in space, the two fleets were getting closer. The Zephyrian ships moved in perfect lines, their weapons charged and ready. They had fought this way for millennia, and they had never lost. Captain Morrison watched the alien fleet on his screens. They were beautiful in a deadly way, like a school of metal sharks swimming through space. But he was not afraid. Amy, he said to his tactical officer, are you ready to show them what chaos looks like? Lieutenant Commander Amy Johnson smiled. Sir, I've been ready for this my whole life. The Zephyrian Admiral Kothak looked at the human ships with contempt. They were small and seemed weak. Their formation was loose and unorganized. This would be easy. All ships, he commanded, prepare for standard attack formation. We will destroy them quickly and move on to their colonies. But as the battle began, something unexpected happened. The human ships did not fight like any enemy the Zephyrians had ever faced. Instead of staying in formation, they scattered in all directions. Instead of fighting in organized groups, they seemed to attack randomly. What are they doing? Kothak demanded. This is not how space battles are fought. His tactical officer, a young Zephyrian named Vextar, studied the screens. Sir, they appear to be ... improvising. Their movements have no pattern. Sophie Morrison led her fighter squadron in a wild attack run. Instead of flying straight at the enemy, like most pilots would, she dove under their big ships and attacked. From below, her wingman Torres followed, firing at weapon systems the Zephyrians had never thought to protect. This is crazy, Torres shouted over the radio. But it's working. The Zephyrian fighters tried to follow, but they were trained to fight in formation. When the human pilots broke all the rules, the aliens did not know how to respond. Dr. Walsh watched the battle from the moon base. His AI systems were learning and adapting faster than he had hoped. Every time the Zephyrians tried a new tactic, the AIs found a way to counter it. Admiral, he said to Lisa, the AIs are working perfectly. They're predicting enemy movements and finding weaknesses in real time. Lisa nodded. And the psychological warfare? The Zephyrians are confused, Kevin said. They don't understand why we're not fighting properly. It's making them make mistakes. Back in space, Admiral Kothak was indeed confused. His ships had superior firepower and better armor, but the humans were somehow avoiding most of his attacks. Their ships moved like living things, unpredictable and fast. Sir, Vextar reported, we've lost contact with 3 of our escort ships. The humans are using some kind of new tactic. Kothak growled. Impossible. We have studied human military tactics for decades. They have no surprises left. But even as he spoke, he watched a group of human ships work together in a way that made no sense. They moved like a school of fish, each ship knowing exactly where the others were going without any apparent communication. Captain Morrison smiled as he watched his plan work. The Zephyrians were powerful, but they were also predictable. They had been fighting the same way for so long that they could not adapt to something new. "Amy," he said, "target their command ship. It's time to show them what human ingenuity can do." The USS Defiance fired its main weapon, but not at the Zephyrian flagship. Instead, it fired at a piece of space debris, which exploded and sent metal fragments flying toward the enemy ship. The Zephyrian's shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not physical objects. The fragments hit the flagship's communication array, and suddenly the entire Zephyrian fleet was in chaos. Without constant orders from their commanders, the alien ships did not know what to do. "Now," Sophie Morrison shouted, "all fighters attack while they're confused." The human pilots struck like lightning, hitting the Zephyrian ships in their most vulnerable spots. For the first time in their history, the Zephyrians were losing a battle. Admiral Korthak stared at his screens in disbelief. "This is impossible," he whispered. "We are the greatest military force in the galaxy. How can these primitives be defeating you?" But deep down, he was beginning to understand. The humans were not fighting like any civilized species. They were fighting like wild animals, unpredictable and dangerous. And for the first time in his long life, Korthak felt fear. The news of the damaged Zephyrian flagship spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Peter Blake stood before the alien representatives who had voted to abandon humanity just hours before. The Altarian delegate, a tall blue creature named Zalthan, stared at the battle reports with wide eyes. "This is impossible," he said in his musical voice. "The Zephyrians have never been defeated in battle." Peter smiled grimly. "Maybe you don't know humans as well as you thought." On the main screen, they could see the space battle in real time. The Zephyrian ships were trying to reform their lines, but the human vessels kept attacking in ways that made no sense. It looked like complete chaos, but somehow it was working. Back in the battle, Admiral Korthak was trying to understand what was happening. His ships were more powerful than the human vessels, but they could not seem to hit them. The humans moved, like they were dancing, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be. "Sir," his tactical officer Vextar reported, "the humans are using a new type of communication system. Our jammers cannot block it." Korthak studied the screens. "Show me their fleet movements from the beginning." As he watched the replay, something became clear. The human ships were not moving randomly at all. They were following a pattern, but it was unlike anything in the Zephyrian military manuals. "They're not fighting like a military," he realized. "They're fighting like a pack of hunting animals." Lieutenant Sophie Morrison dove her fighter through a gap between two Zephyrian cruisers. Her wingman Captain Torres followed close behind, firing at the connection points between their hull plates. It was a weakness that existed on all Zephyrian ships, but no one had ever thought to target it before. "Sophie, this is insane," Torres shouted over the radio. "We're supposed to attack their main weapons, not their hull joints." "That's exactly why it's working," Sophie replied. "They expect us to fight like everyone else. But we're humans. We don't follow the rules." Behind them, Lieutenant Ben Parker was using his fighter's sensors to create false readings. To the Zephyrians, it looked like there were twice as many human ships as there really were. Their targeting computers could not figure out which ships were real and which were fake. On the ground, Colonel Steve Harris was leading his forces in what looked like a hopeless battle. The Zephyrian soldiers were bigger and stronger than humans, with armor that could stop almost any weapon. But Steve had been studying Earth's military history, and he knew that size and strength were not always enough. "Danny," he called to Sergeant Miller, "remember what I taught you about the Battle of Thermopylae." Danny smiled. Use the terrain to your advantage. Make them come to you. Exactly, Steve said. These aliens have conquered hundreds of worlds, but they've never fought on Earth. They don't understand how we think. The Zephyrian ground forces advanced in perfect formation, their weapons ready. They expected the humans to meet them in open battle, like all civilized species did. Instead, the humans disappeared. Corporal Kate Stevens led her squad through the ruins of a bombed building. They had been preparing for this battle for weeks, turning the entire area into a maze of traps and hidden positions. The Zephyrians had superior technology, but they did not understand the human art of guerrilla warfare. Wait until they're right on top of us, Kate whispered to her soldiers. Then hit them from all sides. The Zephyrian commander, General Morthic, looked around in confusion. His thermal sensors showed that there were humans nearby, but he could not see them. According to his military training, this was impossible. Where are they? He demanded. His answer came in the form of explosions all around his forces. The humans had turned everyday objects into weapons. Construction equipment became bombs. Water pipes became spears. Even the rubble from destroyed buildings became projectiles. Sir, one of his soldiers reported, they're using improvised weapons. This is not standard military equipment. General Morthic was horrified. Improvised weapons? What kind of barbaric? Species fights with improvised weapons? But even as he spoke, he watched his perfectly trained soldiers falling to human creativity. The humans used everything around them as a weapon, turning the battlefield itself into their ally. Back in space, Dr. Walsh's AI systems were proving their worth. The artificial intelligence had been learning from the battle, adapting to Zephyrian tactics faster than any living being could. Every time the aliens tried a new strategy, the A's found a counter-strategy within seconds. Admiral, Dr. Walsh reported to Lisa Carter, the A's are working beyond our expectations. They're not just responding to Zephyrian tactics, they're predicting them. Lisa watched the battle with growing excitement. How? The Zephyrians have been using the same basic strategies for thousands of years, Kevin explained. They're predictable. But our A's are learning and evolving in real time. They're becoming unpredictable. On the USS Defiance, Captain Morrison was coordinating the attack on the Zephyrian command ship. His tactical officer, Amy Johnson, had found a weakness in their shield system, a frequency that the aliens had never thought to protect against. Amy, are you sure this will work? Morrison asked. Sir, I've been studying Zephyrian technology for years, Amy replied. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons from other civilized species. But we're not civilized. We're human. The Defiance fired its main weapon, but the energy was modulated to a frequency that the Zephyrian shields had never encountered before. The blast went right through their defenses and hit the command ship's main power core. Admiral Korthek watched in horror as his flagship's lights began to flicker. How did they penetrate our shields? Sir, Vextar reported, they're using some kind of adaptive energy frequency. Our shields don't know how to respond to it. For the first time in his life, Korthek felt real fear. The humans were not just winning, they were doing it with technology that should not exist and tactics that made no sense. Lieutenant Sophie Morrison saw her chance. The Zephyrian flagship was vulnerable, its shields down and its weapons offline. She led her fighter squadron in a desperate attack run, knowing that this might be their only opportunity. All fighters, follow me, she shouted. We're going to finish this. The human fighters dove toward the massive enemy ship like a swarm of angry bees. They fired everything they had, targeting critical systems that the Zephyrians had never thought. To protect, Captain Torres flew alongside Sophie, his face grim with determination. Sophie, even if we don't make it out of this, we've already won. We've shown the galaxy that humans don't give up. We're going to make it out, Sophie replied. All of us. Because that's what humans do. We survive. The fighters struck the Zephyrian flagship like lightning. Explosions rippled across its hull as critical systems failed. The ship that had seemed invincible just hours before was now listing to one side, its weapons silent. On the Galactic Council Station, the alien representatives watched in stunned silence as the impossible happened. The Zephyrian fleet, which had never been defeated, was being destroyed by a species they had considered primitive and weak. How? Whispered the Centauri delegate. How are they doing this? Ambassador Blake stood up, his voice filled with pride. Because they're human. And humans never give up. Admiral Korthak stared at his screens as his fleet fell apart around him. Ship after ship was being destroyed or disabled by human forces that should have been no match for Zephyrian technology. Sir, Vextar said quietly, perhaps we should consider retreat. Korthak looked at his tactical officer with shock. Retreat? The Zephyrian Empire has never retreated from battle. Sir, Vextar replied, the Zephyrian Empire has never faced humans before. As the battle raged on, one thing became clear to everyone watching. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. They had thought humans were weak because they were different. But that difference, their creativity, their adaptability, their refusal to give up, was actually their greatest strength. The Zephyrians were about to learn what every enemy of humanity throughout history had learned. You can defeat human ships, human soldiers, even human worlds. But you cannot defeat the human spirit. And the human spirit was just getting started. The destruction of the first Zephyrian dreadnought sent shockwaves through the galaxy. On the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Peter Blake stood before the alien representatives who had abandoned humanity just hours before. Now they looked at him with new eyes. The Altarian delegate Zalthon was the first to speak. Ambassador Blake, we may have miscalculated humanity's capabilities. Peter looked at the blue alien coldly. You didn't miscalculate. You never bothered to truly understand us. You saw what you wanted to see, a weak species that you could ignore. On the main screen, they watched as more Zephyrian ships fell to human attacks. The impossible was happening, and the galaxy was watching in stunned silence. Back in the battle, Admiral Korthak was facing something he had never experienced in his long military career: defeat. His ships were being destroyed by enemies that should have been easy to crush. But worse than the defeat was the confusion. He could not understand how the humans were doing it. Sir, his tactical officer Vextar reported, we've lost 12 more ships. The humans are using coordinated attacks that appear random, but are actually highly organized. Korthak studied the battle data. Show me their attack patterns again. As he watched, he began to see something terrifying. The human ships were not just following orders. They were thinking for themselves. Each ship seemed to know exactly what the others were going to do, but without any communication that his sensors could detect. They're not fighting like a military. He realized they're fighting like a single organism with many parts. Lieutenant Sophie Morrison led her fighter squadron in another attack run. But this time, something was different. Her fighter's computer was showing her information that she had never seen before. The exact positions of all friendly ships, predicted enemy movements, and optimal attack vectors. Torres, she called to her wingman. Are you seeing this data? Captain. Torres checked his screens. Yes, and it's incredible. It's like our ships are talking to each other without using the radio. They were right. Dr. Walsh's AI systems had created a quantum communication network that connected all human ships. It was completely invisible to enemy sensors, and it allowed the human fleet to coordinate their attacks with perfect precision. On the ground, Colonel Steve Harris was leading his forces in a battle that defied all military logic. The Zephyrian soldiers were bigger, stronger, and better armed than humans, but they were also predictable. "Danny," he called to Sergeant Miller, "remember what I taught you about asymmetric warfare?" Danny smiled as he prepared another improvised. "Explosive. Use the enemy's strength against them, sir." "Exactly," Steve said. "They're trained to fight armies." "We're not fighting like an army. We're fighting like a resistance movement." The Zephyrian ground forces had been advancing in perfect formation, expecting to meet human soldiers in open battle. Instead, they found themselves in a maze of traps and ambushes. Every building, every street corner, every piece of rubble had been turned into a weapon. General Morthak was becoming increasingly frustrated. His forces were taking heavy casualties, but they could barely see the enemy. The humans appeared, attacked, and disappeared like ghosts. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "the humans are using the civilian population as support. They're getting intelligence from everywhere." Morthak was horrified. "Civilians? But civilians are not supposed to participate in warfare." "Corporal." Kate Stevens smiled as she coordinated with the local population. Her grandmother had been a resistance fighter in World War II, and she had taught Kate that ordinary people could be the most powerful weapon of all. "Mrs. Johnson," she said to an elderly woman who was watching from her window, "can you tell me where the aliens are moving their heavy weapons?" The old woman nodded. "They're setting up in the park, dear. But they don't know about the old subway. Tunnels underneath." Kate grinned. "Thank you, ma'am. We'll take care of it." Within minutes, Sergeant Miller's squad was moving through the abandoned subway system, carrying explosives made from mining equipment and household chemicals. The Zephyrians had no idea that their weapons depot was about to become a crater. Back in space, the battle was reaching a critical point. The Zephyrian fleet had lost over half its ships, but they still had their massive dreadnoughts, city-sized vessels that could destroy planets. Captain Morrison watched as the largest Zephyrian dreadnought began to charge its main weapon, Amy. "What's the target?" Lieutenant Commander Amy Johnson checked her sensors. "Sir, it's aimed at Colony 7. 2 million civilians." Morrison felt his jaw clench. "Not on my watch. All ships, coordinate attack on the dreadnought. We stop it here." But as the human ships moved to attack, something unexpected happened. The dreadnought's communication array suddenly came to life with human signals. Dr. Walsh's AI systems had managed to hack into the alien ship's computer network. "Morrison," Dr. Walsh's voice crackled over the radio, "my AIs have infiltrated their systems. We can turn their own weapons against them." The massive dreadnought's weapons began to turn toward other Zephyrian ships instead of the human colony. The aliens watched in horror as their own flagship began firing on their fleet. "Admiral," Korthak stared at his screens in disbelief. "How are they controlling our ships?" "Sir," Vexstar reported, "they've somehow accessed our computer networks. Our own technology is being used against us." This was the moment that changed everything. The Zephyrians had always relied on their superior technology, but now that technology was working for the humans. The hunters had become the hunted. Lieutenant Sophie Morrison saw her chance. With the Zephyrian fleet in chaos, she led her remaining fighters in a desperate attack on the enemy command ship. She knew that if they could destroy the flagship, the entire alien fleet would be leaderless. "All fighters, this is it," she shouted. One last push. Captain Torres flew beside her, his fighter damaged, but still fighting. "Sophie, even if we don't make it, we've already won. We've shown the galaxy what humans can do." "We're going to make it," Sophie replied. "All of us. Because humans don't give up." The fighters struck the Zephyrian flagship like lightning. But this time, they were not alone. The human capital ships had coordinated their attack perfectly, hitting the alien vessel from multiple angles simultaneously. The flagship's shields, which had seemed invincible, finally failed. Explosions rippled across its hull as the ship began to break apart. Admiral Korthek watched his command bridge dissolve around him, knowing that he had just witnessed the end of an empire. On the Galactic Council Station, the alien representatives watched in stunned silence as the Zephyrian fleet was destroyed. The species they had considered primitive and weak had just defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy. How? Whispered the Centauri delegate. How did they do it? Ambassador Blake stood up, his voice filled with quiet pride. Because they're human. And humans have something that no other species in the galaxy has ever understood. What's that? Asked Zalthan. The ability to turn any situation into an opportunity, Peter replied. The Zephyrians thought they were fighting a weak enemy, but they were actually fighting a species that has spent its entire history learning how to win against impossible odds. Back on Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter was receiving reports from across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled through fear for thousands of years, was collapsing. Their fleets were surrendering ore, fleeing, their colonies were declaring independence, and their government was in chaos. Admiral, Dr. Walsh reported, we're receiving surrender offers from Zephyrian commanders across the galaxy. They want to negotiate, Lisa smiled. Tell them that humanity accepts their surrender, but the terms will be ours, not theirs. As the news spread, something amazing happened. Species that had been oppressed by the Zephyrians for centuries began to rebel. The Corvin survivors came out of hiding. The Deltian resistance movement launched coordinated attacks. The galaxy was waking up from a nightmare that had lasted for millennia. Colonel Steve Harris stood in the ruins of what had been a Zephyrian command post. His forces had captured it using nothing but improvised weapons and human ingenuity. The alien soldiers who had seemed so terrifying just hours before were now prisoners, looking confused and defeated. Sir, Sergeant Miller said, what do we do with them? Steve looked at the captured aliens. We treat them with dignity. We're not conquerors. We're liberators. This was the moment that defined humanity's place in the galaxy. They had not just won a battle, they had won it while maintaining their humanity. They had shown that strength without compassion was not true strength at all. As the last Zephyrian ship fled from human space, the galaxy began to understand a new truth. Humanity was not just another species to be ignored or dismissed. They were something the galaxy had never seen before. A young species with an ancient wisdom about the nature of war and peace. The Zephyrians had ruled through fear and superior technology. But humans had won through creativity, adaptability, and the refusal to give up. They had proven that the most powerful weapon in the universe was not a gun or a bomb, but the human spirit itself, and the galaxy would never be the same. The final battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching as his damaged ship moved toward the Zephyrian flagship. His crew had already evacuated to smaller vessels, but he remained behind with a skeleton crew for one last mission. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Amy Johnson said, the ship's AI is ready to execute the final protocol. Jake nodded. Dr. Walsh's artificial intelligence had learned everything there was to know about Zephyrian technology. Now it was time to use that knowledge in a way the aliens would never expect. All right, everyone, Jake said over the radio. To his evacuating crew, it's been an honor serving with you. Amy, activate the AI takeover protocol. The USS Defiance suddenly came alive in a way it never had before. The ship's computer took complete control, using every system with perfect efficiency. To the Zephyrians, it looked like Jake was making a suicide run. They had no idea that the ship had just become the most dangerous weapon in space. Admiral Korthak watched the approaching human vessel with confusion. What are they doing? This is madness. Sir, his tactical officer Vextar reported the human ship appears to be on a collision course, but our sensors are detecting strange energy patterns. As the Defiance struck the Zephyrian flagship, something incredible happened. Instead of exploding, the human ship's AI invaded the alien computer systems like a virus. Within seconds, the massive enemy vessel was under human control. The Zephyrian bridge went dark for a moment, then came back online with human voices speaking from their own computers. Admiral Korthek, came Jake Morrison's voice through the alien speakers. This is Captain Morrison of the United Earth Fleet. Your ship is now under our control. I suggest you surrender. Korthak stared at his screens in horror. His own ship was turning its weapons on the rest of his fleet. The humans had not just captured his flagship, they had turned it into a weapon against his own forces. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Sophie Morrison was leading the final fighter attack. But this was not like the earlier battles. Now the human pilots were fighting with perfect coordination, guided by AI systems that could predict every enemy move. Torres, she called to her wingman, the A's are showing us exactly where to hit them. It's like having a roadmap to victory. Captain Ryan Torres smiled grimly. Then let's follow that map home. The human fighters struck with surgical precision, disabling Zephyrian ships instead of destroying them. This was not about revenge. It was about ending the war as quickly as possible with minimal loss of life. On the ground, Colonel Steve Harris was coordinating the final assault on the Zephyrian Command Center. But his soldiers were not advancing. Like a traditional army, they moved through the city like water, flowing around enemy positions and striking where the aliens least expected it. Sergeant Danny Miller led his squad through the underground tunnels, carrying improvised explosives made from civilian materials. Sir, he reported to Steve, we're in position under their main base. Remember, Steve replied, we want to capture, not destroy. These aliens have knowledge we can use to help other oppressed species. Corporal Kate Stevens was coordinating with the civilian population, who had become an intelligence network that the Zephyrians could not understand or counter. Old women reported enemy movements from their windows. Children pointed out hidden weapon caches. Shop owners provided safe houses for human soldiers. This is how humans really fight, Kate said to her squad. Not as soldiers against soldiers, but as a people defending their home. The Zephyrian General Morthek was trapped in his command bunker, watching his forces fall apart around him. He could not understand how the humans were everywhere at once, how they seemed to know his every move before he made it. Sir, one of his officers reported, the humans are offering us terms for surrender. Morthek looked at the terms on his screen. They were generous, too generous for a defeated enemy. The humans were offering medical care for wounded Zephyrians, safe passage home for those who wanted to leave, and even the possibility of joining the human alliance for those who chose to stay. Why? He asked aloud. Why are they being so merciful? The answer came from Colonel Harris himself, who had entered the bunker through a service tunnel that the Zephyrians had never thought to guard. Because that's who we are, Steve said simply. We fight hard when we have to, but we don't fight for revenge. We fight for freedom. Back in space, the battle was coming to an end. The Zephyrian fleet, once the most feared force in the galaxy, was either destroyed, captured, or fleeing. Admiral Korthek found himself standing in his own bridge as a prisoner, watching human officers operate his ship's systems. How? He asked Jake Morrison. How did you do this? Jake looked at the alien admiral with something like pity. You spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war, but you forgot something important. War is not about having the best weapons or the strongest ships. It's about adapting to survive. But your technology is inferior, Korthak protested. Your ships are smaller. Your weapons are weaker. That's true, Jake admitted. But our minds are not smaller or weaker. And in the end, that's what matters. Dr. Walsh's voice came over the communication system. Admiral Korthek, your empire is finished. Your colonies are rebelling, your fleets are surrendering, and your government is collapsing. But humanity is offering you something your species has never offered its enemies, a chance to join us as equals. An alien admiral was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. What do you want from us? Help us rebuild the galaxy, Jake said. Help us create a federation where species work together instead of conquering each other. Help us make sure that what your empire did to others never happens again. On the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Peter Blake was addressing the assembled representatives. The aliens who had voted to abandon humanity just hours before now looked at him with new respect and not a little fear. The war is over, Peter announced. The Zephyrian Empire has surrendered. But humanity is not interested in taking their place as galactic overlords. The Altarian delegate Zalthan leaned forward. What do you want then? We want a new galactic order, Peter said. One based on cooperation instead of domination. One where species are judged by their actions, not their technology or their military power. The Centauri delegate spoke up. And if we refuse? Peter smiled, but it was not a pleasant smile. Then you'll face the same choice the Zephyrians faced. Join us willingly, or be forced to join us after we demonstrate why that's a bad idea. The message was clear. Humanity had proven that they could defeat any military force in the galaxy. But more importantly, they had proven that they would use that power responsibly. Back on Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter was receiving reports from across the galaxy. Species that had been oppressed for millennia were declaring their independence. The Corvan survivors were coming out of hiding. The Delshan resistance was taking control of their homeworld. The galaxy was transforming before their eyes. Admiral, Dr. Walsh reported, we're receiving applications from over 50 species who want to join our alliance. Lisa smiled. Tell them we'll consider each application based on their commitment to freedom and cooperation, not their military or economic power. Lieutenant Sophie Morrison landed her fighter on the USS Defiance, which was now serving as the flagship of the human fleet. She was exhausted but triumphant. She had helped win the most important battle in galactic history. Her father, Jake, was waiting for her in the hangar bay. I'm proud of you, he said, embracing her. You and Torres and all the pilots showed the galaxy what human courage looks like. Sophie smiled sadly. Torres didn't make it, Dad. He sacrificed himself to destroy their communications array. Jake nodded solemnly. He died so that millions of others could live free. That's what heroes do. Colonel Steve Harris stood in the former Zephyrian Command Center, now serving as a coordination point for humanitarian aid. Human medics were treating wounded aliens alongside wounded humans. Human engineers were helping to rebuild damaged cities. Human teachers were sharing knowledge with species who had been kept ignorant by their oppressors. Sir, Sergeant Miller said, the former General Morthek wants to speak with you. Steve found the Zephyrian general in the medical bay, being treated for his injuries by a human doctor. The alien looked up as Steve approached. I don't understand, Morthek said. We came to destroy you. Why are you helping us? Steve sat down beside the bed, because that's what humans do. We help those who need help, even our former enemies. But why? The general pressed. What do you gain from this? Peace, Steve said simply. A galaxy where our children can grow up without fear. A future where species work together instead of fighting each other. As news of the human victory spread, something amazing happened across the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for centuries began to reach out to each other. The Altarians offered to share their medical technology. The Centauri opened their trade routes to all species. The galaxy was learning to hope again. 6 months later, Captain Jake Morrison stood before the new Galactic Assembly. He had been promoted to Admiral and chosen to speak for humanity at the first meeting of the reformed galactic government. 6 months ago, he began, many of you thought humanity was weak. You thought we could be ignored or sacrificed with.